Hello, welcome back from break. Yesterday, first day back, we hit you with some factoring again because it is not going away. So hopefully you put the effort into making sure you understood that first semester. If not, you need to get in to get some help in the next couple weeks here because this next test is going to also rely on factoring quite a bit. Today we're going to start talking about the first target of the next unit, which is simplify rational expressions. So target 4.1 is I can simplify rational expressions. If you can factor, this is actually really easy. A little bit of vocab first. A rational expression is an expression in which there are polynomials in the numerator and denominator. A restriction on the domain is any x value that needs to be excluded from the domain of a function. What this is if you type divide by 0 in your calculator, anything divided by 0 in your calculator, you get a domain error. That's because there's a restriction there. We can't have a 0 in the denominator. It doesn't matter if there's 0 in the numerator, we can't have a 0 in the denominator. Because that gives us something that is undefined. So, first we're going to identify the restrictions on the domain. For the restrictions, we only care about the bottom. We don't care what is going on the top. So the first step is to factor the bottom. The second step is to set it equal to 0. Notice these two are already factored, so we're going to go ahead and solve each of those. So I subtract 5 for the first one, and add 4 for the second one. So my restrictions are that x cannot equal -5 or 4. Okay, and I show that my restrictions are that because by using this not equal to sign. That's my way of knowing that I can't use those values. Okay, so second one, 3x equals 0, x plus 2 equals 0, and then solve each of those. So divide by 3 to get 0, subtract 2 to get -2. So my restrictions for the second one are 0 and -2. Okay, so pretty easy to find your restrictions. First step is to factor. Second step is to set the bottoms equal to 0, and go from there. So what we actually want you to do here is simplify. You have to always identify restrictions when you're simplifying because it's possible that you might get something that is kind of weird there. Okay, so our steps are still going to be the same. We're going to factor the numerator and denominator. So looking at the numerator, for this I can take out a 2. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. If I take out a 2, I'm left with x minus 4. And then the denominator is 3 terms. So I'm going to go ahead and do an x factor there. So the two numbers that multiply to give me 8 and add up to -6 are -2 and -4. Since there's nothing out front here, okay, there's no number here, it's a 1, I don't have to do I can do x factor, I don't have to do AC split. So I'm going to go right to my parentheses, I have x minus 2 and x minus 4. So that's my first step there, is to factor both the numerator and denominator. The second step is to find my restrictions. So I'm going to go ahead and find those by setting the bottoms equal to 0 and solving. Now some of you are going to start doing this in your head really quickly, which is fine. Just make sure you're really careful with your signs. So my restrictions are 2 and 4. Okay, so that's a huge part of your solution. X cannot be 2 or 4. And then to simplify, it's actually really easy. Anything that you have in common between the top and the bottom, and I'm actually going to move some of this around here. Anything you have in common between the top and the bottom of the fraction can get canceled. Okay, so I'm going to just show you what this looks like. I'm going to move this around a little bit. So there's my restrictions. There's my fraction. Okay, so to simplify, all I'm going to do is if it appears, for every time it appears in the top and the bottom, you can cancel it. So if I have an x minus 4 on top and x minus 4 on bottom, I can cancel those. So my simplified fraction is 2 over x minus 2. The most common mistake that I see here is that students try to cancel these 2's. You cannot do that if there's a plus or minus sign separating the 2 from something else. You can only do it when they're in parentheses as a whole group. Okay, so let's do another one. GCF on the top, I'm going to take out a 6, so I'm left with x minus 2. And then on the bottom, I can do an x factor. So I have -20 on top and 8 on bottom. So I'm going to do 10 and -2. And again, since there's nothing on the bottom, in the front on the bottom, I can go ahead and go right to my parentheses. So I have x plus 10 times x minus 2 on the bottom. Really important that you find your restrictions next. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So x plus 10 equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0. So my restrictions are x cannot be negative 10 or positive 2. Okay, notice I did that before I canceled anything out. Most common mistake with restrictions is the students will start canceling things right away first and then find the restrictions. You have to find your restrictions first. And then the last step is to cancel. Notice I have an x minus 2 on top, x minus 2 on bottom. So I'm left with 6 over x plus 10 for my final answer. Okay, so go ahead and try those. Do not forget to find your restrictions there. And hit pause while you do them, and then come back and check. Okay, so if you factored for both of these, they're a little trickier for some people because all they are GCS. You don't actually have to do a lot of extra work. So I went ahead and factored, found my restrictions, and have my solutions. So go ahead and hit pause, check your answers there, and you should be good. 2 more guided practice problems. Again, hit pause, do them, and then hit play again when you're ready to check. Okay, go ahead and check these. Top one for the number 3, you just did GSAF. Bottom one is X factor. Find your restrictions and then cancel. Number 4 is one that you really need to pay attention to when you are factoring. The top is actually difference of squares, so when you factor it, it should be an x plus 2, x minus 2. Those will show up a lot in this unit because we want to make sure you're catching those, and students tend to forget how to factor that correctly. For the bottom, you actually have to go through and do AC split. So all of that I highlighted in yellow is the work to get me the factored bottom. Be careful when you're finding restrictions here. I showed the work because you actually do have a fraction for your restriction. Make sure you subtract 3 and then divide by 2, so you get negative 3 halves. Second one's easy. You just add 2 to both sides. And then cancel to get x plus 2 over 2x plus 3. Well, that's it for simplifying. It's pretty easy. Factor everything, set the bottoms equal to 0 to find your restrictions, and then start canceling. Have a great day.